Chapter 8, Stowaway, Lost and Found. Sometimes there is no going back. In the aftermath of the Jarek attack, Leo's father did what he could to try and make life normal again. The boys went back to school. Gareth started running for his middle school track team, the Westbrook Wildcats, leaving it all on the oval. The hurt and the regret, the backwards glancing fear intensified now by the constant presence of patrol ships, joint forces of human and Ikari both hovering in the sky. He ran so hard he made himself physically sick. Then he wiped his mouth and got ready for the next event. Leo didn't even try to outrun the pain. He knew he wasn't fast enough. Instead, he tried to bottle it all, capping it and shelving it indefinitely, hoping to build a wall around it. But everywhere he went, he was reminded of what he'd lost. The war slogans, the news, the discussions in class. The giant vid screens on the sides of the towers replayed the footage from the day as part of their military recruitment efforts. It is up to you. Join the Coalition Expeditionary Force and help put an end to the terror that threatens our galaxy. Today we can unite the free planets, defeat the Jark, and bring a lasting peace. Lasting peace. But everywhere you looked, the world was gearing up for a war. Factories that had been producing cars and air conditioners began producing transports and torpedoes. Pilots once trained to fly everything from 747s to F-19s were trained to fly Ikari starfighters and bombers. The number of excavators churning through Earth's crust seemed to double overnight, extracting the Ventasium necessary to power warships across the expanse of space. Leo could look out his bedroom window and see one of those excavators towering in the distance. And when you looked down on the Earth from a satellite view, you could zoom in to see the holes they left behind, empty pores in the planet's skin too deep to fill. Leo passed by one on his way to school, though you could see it beyond the titanium wall, designed to keep people from falling in. If you did, you would probably feel like you were falling forever. That's how Leo felt most of the time anyway. Meanwhile, his magic paraphernalia gathered dust in his closet, the top hat getting bent under the weight of dirty clothes, the one that couldn't produce a puff of colorful smoke. Most days, he couldn't even bear to look at it all. But his father noticed. One night after dinner, 2 months after the attack, he asked Leo to put on a show. Why? Leo asked. Because I want you to. But what's the point? The point is, you're good at it, and I enjoy watching it, and I think if you try it again, you'll enjoy it too. But it'll still be the same old tricks, Leo protested. It's not as if I'm going to learn any new ones. And why is that exactly? Leo didn't answer. His father knew exactly what he meant. Dr. Fender frowned. I don't think your mother would have wanted you to just give up on what you love now that she's gone. There's a lot less magic in the world, which means it's up to us to fill it. We owe it to her to keep going, Leo, to better ourselves, to better each other, don't you think? Leo pictured his mother sitting on the porch, the single blade of grass pressed between her fingers. I see you, my little lion. If she were here, she could teach him the scarf trick. She could show him how to make the ace of diamonds stick to the wall. She could teach him all the rules he hadn't yet learned. There were magic books, videos, camps, classes, but the truth was he didn't want to do it without her. The truth was he needed her to show him the way. Leo's father sighed. I know everything seems dark right now. I know you're angry and sad and confused because I'm all of those things too. But we are going to get through this. And I'm not just talking about your mom. I'm talking about all of it. This whole big mess we've been caught up in. We are going to get through it because we are smart and we are strong. And most important, because we have each other. You, me, and Gareth. We are our own coalition. And you may not feel that way, but I know in my heart that your mother is up there somewhere watching over us, just like the Ikari are watching over us, guiding us, protecting us, but we still have to do our part, and that means using the gifts we've been given, like your talent for pulling quarters out of my ears. So what do you say? Put on a show? Leo shrugged. Maybe, he said. It was as good as his father was going to get. That night, Leo stood in front of his closet, staring down at the open chest with all his magic stuff inside, his hat, his magnetic wand, his many decks of cards. He spotted the string of scarves all tied together, every color of the rainbow. He softly closed the trunk and shut the closet door. Leo stared into the mouth of his tin cup and the bubbling orange goo it contained. This apparently was what the crew of the Icarus had to eat. Leo had spent some time in the back helping Boo with the repairs to Skitz's tread, while the Quilletti heard Leo's stomach growl, loud enough to be heard above the welder he was operating. What was that? Is there an angry parasite living inside you? If so, I'd like fair warning if it tries to escape. Leo put his hands over his stomach, embarrassed. Just hungry, I guess. Boo said he knew just the thing, and moments later Leo was staring at it, trying not to grimace. It smelled spicy. One whiff tickled his nose hairs and made him sneeze. What did you call this? What was this called again? Gyrt, the Quilletti said, taking a huge spoonful of the stuff from his own cup and swallowing it contentedly. Gyrt, like yogurt? It looked like yogurt, sort of, if yogurt had chunks and bubbles and made your eyes water. No, gyrt, Boo insisted. Like gyrt. I call it dog vomit, Cat said matter-of-factly. We had a dog back on Andorol when I was young, named it Herc, because it threw up constantly. Looked just like that. Her cup held water, not gyrt. Leo should have taken that as a sign. Gyrt is a traditional Quilletti dish made from knurlfing milk and boiled jack tree bark. It's a staple among my people, Boo insisted, happily slurping from his own cup. Sounds delicious? Leo lied. Leo had no idea what a knurlfing even looked like. He pushed his gyrt around with the tip of his spoon. What are the chunks? Magu bean, Boo said. Leo grimaced again. Boo's what we would call a vegetarian, Cat said. Doesn't eat anything that he can look in the eye. Just try it. It's really not bad as far as dog vomit goes. Leo's stomach gurgled. He put a little bit on the edge of his spoon, brought it to its lips. The important thing about gyrt is to not let it sit on your tongue too long, Boo warned. The jack tree bark gives it a nice kick, but it can also cause blisters. Leo set his spoon gently back in the cup. Boo snored dismissively. Humans. You claim to be so adventurous, but you're afraid of everything. The Quilletti caught Cat glaring at him. With some exceptions, he amended. And your people really eat this stuff, like, all the time? Leo wanted to know. Our people eat bologna, Cat said, coming to Quilletti's defense. What's a bologna? Boo asked. Honestly, nobody really knows, Cat replied. A mystery in every bite. Leo would kill for a bologna sandwich right now. He took one more sniff of his gyrt and then pushed the cup away from him just as Bastion Black's voice called out from over the comms. Cat, can you get up here? We have a situation. Oh, what now? She handed Leo her empty cup and took off in the direction of the bridge. Leo handed both cups he was holding to Boo, who had the hands to spare, and followed, ignoring the Quilletti yelling at him. You didn't even try it! He got to the cockpit, but stood just outside the door listening to Cat's voice first, followed by Baz's. Both of them were tense. You sure these are the right coordinates? I'm telling you, I checked the log. This is where the kid's ship was when we boarded it. Leo felt his already gurgling stomach start to ache. There was only one thing this could mean. He stepped into the cockpit to see for himself. There was nothing to see. The ship, his ship, was no longer there. Where is it? Leo asked, getting the attention of the other two. Where's the Beagle? Where's my brother? Is what he almost said, but it amounted to the same question. I don't know, kid. According to the nav log, this is where we left it. Something happened. Maybe they found a way to repair the sublight engines, and maybe they're already on their way to... Baz's sentence was cut off by Kat pointing out of the cockpit as something coming towards them. A twisted hunk of metal as big as Icarus hurtling through space, and then another, and another. Debris. Wreckage from a ship that had been destroyed. Leo felt his knees buckle, his chest tighten. He reached out for the back of Kat's seat to hold himself up. He missed, collapsing to the cockpit floor. Everything started to blur, but even though his fuzzy vision, Leo caught Baz unbuckling his restraints, coming to kneel beside him. Leo, what's happening? What's wrong with him? How am I supposed to know? Kat said. Gareth was on that ship. Leo had left him there, along with Tex, Captain Saito, Lieutenant Berg. He'd left them all there. He'd abandoned them. His chest tightened further, the panic clawing its way inside, wrapping cold fingers around his windpipe, squeezing mercilessly. Baz, we've got a problem. Tell me about it. I think this kid's having a heart attack. No, different problem. Jark fighters incoming. You've got to be kidding me, Bastion hissed. He crawled back into the pilot's seat. Help him, he shouted, pointing at Leo. Boo, get your big furry butt up here, he shouted even louder. Kat was next to Leo now, leaning close, her eyes only inches away from his. Breathe, Leo, just breathe, she whispered. She sounded like his dad. The pressure on his chest was unbearable now. He fumbled at his pocket, wrapping his fingers around his inhaler, pulling it free just as the Qualetti appeared. What's going on? Is Leo okay? Does he look like he's okay? Kat snapped. Dark shadows crept under the edges of Leo's vision. He heard Baz's voice. These guys are closing fast. There's a whole swarm of them. Too many to take on. We've got no choice. We've got to get out of here. No, Leo wanted to say, but he could barely even breathe, so the cries only echoed in his own head. No, we can't leave. Not without Garrett. He told me to get help. He told me to come back for him, and I came back. He fumbled with the cap of his inhaler, but it slipped out of his shaking hands. Baz's voice rang out again. Boo, get that kid strapped in. We're going to have to make a jump. Jump where? Kat asked. You let me figure that out. You just try to keep those fighters off of our back. Leo fumbled around on the floor, one hand brushing up against his inhaler, knocking it further away. It's like they were just waiting for us, Kat said. They were definitely waiting for someone, Baz answered. Leo's eyes fluttered. He could just make out the Qualetti holding his inhaler out to him. Here, Boo said. Leo took it with both hands, brought it to his lips, took a deep breath as he could manage, just enough. He felt himself lifted by 4 arms and placed into a seat, heard the click of the buckle snapping home. He still had his inhaler clutched tight in one hand, but with the other he reached out to a seat in front of him. Gareth, he rasped. Sorry, kid, Bastion Black said. I tried. And almost like flipping a switch, Leo's world turned black. Breathe. Some days, it was as simple and as difficult as that. Just breathe. There were nights, not long after the attack. Leo would wake with a monster sitting on his chest, a nebulous black beast crushing him under its weight. He would swing out with his fist to knock the imaginary creature off, screaming, knocking the lamp from his nightstand instead, tangling himself in his comforter, his door opening to reveal his father, or sometimes Gareth flipping on the overhead light, then beside him, holding the mask from his nebulizer. Just breathe, they said. And some days it seemed that was all he could do, while the world around him raged, while humans from every nation signed up to board naval cruisers, volunteered to man distant outposts, gave impassioned speeches on the need to bring the Jark to justice for the crimes against Earth. Leo tried to leave the house as little as possible. He closed himself in his room. He seldom saw his friends outside school. He avoided looking at pictures on the walls. Every night the Ikari would play its coalition message of unity, broadcast from the ships that umbrellaed the planet. Citizens of Earth, we are with you. And every night Leo would curl up with Amos the cat and Houdini, the stuffed rabbit, and will himself not to cry. But as the weeks and months passed, the pain abated. The black beast didn't come to haunt him as often, and the hole inside Leo slowly started to fill as he realized that one consoling truth, that he wasn't alone. His mother was gone, but he had his dad. He had Gareth. He had his cat, his shelf of shells, his view of the mountains, the hammock in the backyard, just in reach of the shade of the cherry blossom tree, where he and his brother would sit and read, kicking each other to get more room. And then the cherry blossom tree died, stricken with an unknown fungus that had spread throughout the backyards across the entire neighborhood, causing its bark to bloom white, its leaves to shrivel and fall. As soon as it was taken down, Leo and Gareth convinced their dad to let them plant another. The tree was little more than a sapling when the Fenders boarded the Beagle, waving goodbye to the only home they had ever known. Leo had no idea if it was even still there. When Leo came to, he was lying on a cot, half naked, into an eerily smiling face. "About time," Skit said. Leo blinked. Everything looked unfamiliar, too bright and smeared around the edges. He tried to sit, to at least pull himself up to his elbows, but the strap across his chest made it impossible. "What's going on?" he croaked, finding his voice. His throat felt raw. "Why am I strapped down?" "Oh, you were thrashing around in your sleep, screaming too. I wanted to stuff a rag in your mouth to shut you up, but Bastion said I couldn't." Leo fumbled with the buckle, but the way it felt across his arms, he couldn't quite reach it. "Where's my shirt?" "You covered it in vomit when we made the jump. It was revolting. Baz told me to wash it, but I burned it instead. It was easier. It had a hole in it anyway." Leo didn't remember being sick. He didn't even remember making a jump. He struggled again to reach the buckle, fumbling with the straps. Skits watched him. "You look ridiculous," she said. "Be still." With one of the claws that extended from her torso, she released the buckle and the straps fell free. Leo noticed the robot had been fully repaired. A new titanium plate had been grafted over the hole from the laser blast, and across the brand new sticker had been plastered, "Coffee first, then we'll see." He wondered if Skits had any notion what coffee was supposed to taste like. He looked down at his own bare chest and the sunken cavity of his stomach that hadn't been full for days. He tried to sit up, but regretted the move instantly, as a sudden sharp pain ricocheting around his skull. It felt as if someone had struck him in the back of the head with the flat end of a shovel. "Right?" Skits continued, watching him rub the spot. "So Boo might have accidentally slammed your head into the side of the door, carrying you back here. Not that you noticed. You apparently fainted the moment we jumped away from the Jark fighters." "What Jark Leo started to say. In a rush, it all came back to him. The captain's plan to take Leo back to his ship, the bits of wreckage floating in space, pieces of mangled metal scattered to the stars. Gareth. For a moment, Leo felt like he might pass out again. He put his head between his knees and took a deep but shuddering breath. "What happened?" he asked. "I already told you. You threw up, then you fainted, then Boo slammed your head against the door, then I burned your shirt and tried to gag you, and then— No, what happened to my ship?" Leo said sharply. "What happened to the Beagle?" "Oh, that," Skit said. "Bastion isn't sure. Says it could have been any number of things. Malfunction in the emergency power system triggering an explosion, more pirates. Maybe the coalition came for a rescue and then scuttled the ship, thinking it unsalvageable. Most likely, though, it was the Jark again. Come back to finish the job." Finish the job. Leo remembered Cat yelling at Baz. The squadron of fighters bearing down on them. What about the crew? My brother? Bastion says we can't be sure of that either. But I have my suspicions. Would you like to hear them? Before Leo could answer, the robot added, "No, you probably wouldn't." Leo rubbed his head, tried to stand, swayed by the dizziness and nausea. "Where's Captain Black?" "With everyone else, having a big important meeting in the cockpit. But was I invited? Of course not, because I'm just a robot. So I was stuck here watching over you. Leo took 3 steps, the whole room spinning around him. He put a hand out, finding the wall, using it to guide him. You should lie back down. You could have a concussion, Skits called after him. But you know what? Go ahead and ignore me. See if I care. You're as stubborn as the rest of them. Leo made his way through the Icarus, hands on the sides of the ship's narrow corridors to keep from falling. He could hear voices coming from the front. Boo's, Cat's, the captain's. Why would a whole squadron of fighters stick around after the ship was already destroyed? Maybe it was a trap. Maybe they were waiting for the coalition but caught us instead. Or maybe we just got there moments after they blew up the blasted thing. That still doesn't quite explain why they came back to the ship, given they were the ones to strand it in the first place. It doesn't make any sense. Cat was the first to notice Leo standing there, Skits rolling up behind him. I told him to lay down, but he didn't listen, the robot complained, because nobody listens to me. It's all right, Skits, Baz said. How are you feeling, kid? He asked. Then Leo answered himself. Stupid question. Leo stood in the doorway, shivering, arms crossing his bare chest, and seconds later Boo was beside him, taking off his robe, his yunkai, wrapping it around Leo's shoulders. It draped off of him, piled up at his feet, but he could feel the Quiletti's residual warmth, and the shivering slowed. So that was it, Leo said. That was really the beagle we saw. I guess we can't say really for certain, Cat answered. It was a big ship, and the coordinates were right. And the crew? Leo pressed. We can't be sure of that either, Baz said. It's possible they weren't on the board when the ship was destroyed. Possible, Leo repeated. Possible his brother escaped somehow. Possible his father was still alive. Possible was a funny word. Possible was a piece of driftwood floating in the middle of the ocean. Something just big enough to cling to keep you afloat. It wasn't hope. Hope was spotting an island on the horizon or hearing a ship's horn in the distance. Possible was something less than that, the potential for hope. And with it, that sickening dread like a stomach full of wriggling maggots. Leo looked through the cockpit into the seemingly never-ending blackness. He started to falter, but Boo held him up. I've got you. Leo felt his throat ache, his eyes sting. Then he heard his brother's voice again. Be brave, Leo. He wanted to, but it felt like it took everything he had just to stay standing. He scanned the blackness for something familiar. So, where are we now? On our way to Vestra Prime, Black said. It's the planetary equivalent of a dive bar. Only regulars ever really go there. Regular what? Leo wondered. It's a good place to lie low, Cat explained. In other words, they were on the run. We jumped as close as we could, but we ran out of E, Baz explained. Guess I should have given Grimm's 9 cores instead. They were running away, and they were taking Leo with them to another place he'd never ever even heard of. Leo shut his eyes and felt himself move away, his mind slipping out of the ship through the emptiness, jumping from one point of light to another, searching for something familiar. A turquoise marble with swirls of white, a 2-story house with robin's egg blue shutters, a patch of green overdue for mowing, the sound of a ball slapping into a pocket of a glove. Leo could almost smell the leather, could almost hear his brother's voice telling him to go underneath it, to not be afraid. It was Baz's voice that brought him back. Leo? Leo opened his eyes, remembered where he was, who he was with. What was on that ship, Leo? What? Leo asked, blinking. Your ship. We suspect the Jarek came back for it. Why? I don't know, Leo said, shaking his head. I don't know why they'd come back. They took what they wanted the first time. Your father, we know, Baz said. But there had to be something worth coming back for, something they must have missed the first time around. What was it? I don't know, Leo shouted. I don't know what they would be looking for. They crippled the ship and left us for dead. Leo glared at the captain, his body shaking, even under the heavy rope. But you know that. You saw it when you boarded us. Then you left us there too. Leo realized his mistake as soon as he said it. Us. because they hadn't all been left behind. Leo was standing right here. He had gotten out, just like Gareth had promised. At least this way I'll know. Warm tears coursed down both cheeks. He knew they were all watching, but he didn't care. Does he have to do that? It's making me uncomfortable, Skits asked. The sound of Kat's mechanical hands smacking the robot's steel plating echoed through the cockpit, following by a heavy silence. Leo kept his head down, afraid to look at them, at least until he heard Boz's voice again. We can't be sure what happened to your ship or your brother, but there might be a way we can find your dad. Leo brushed a tear-smeared cheek against one of Quilletti's many sleeves. What? Your father. If he was taken by the Jarek, there's probably some record of him in their military database. We could find out where he's being held. We'd have to hack into it, of course. Leo was confused, unsure why the notorious Bastion Black was helping him again. You can do that? We can't, Baz said. But there is a couple of guys on Vestra who can. The captain glanced knowingly at Kat. After a second, she threw her hands up in revolt. Please, no, Baz, not them. If anyone can worm their way into the Jarek security system, it's those two. Yeah, but they're just so... Ugh. And the one with his... sitting right there in the thing... Kat shuddered. It creeps me out just thinking about it. Leo sniffed, pulled his borrowed robe tighter around him. You think they could do it? You think these guys can really find my dad? I don't know, Bass said. I imagine Jarek network defenses are pretty strong. And there is also the question of payment. How much? Boo asked. Leo thought of the Pentars probably still sitting in the pockets of the captain's jacket. Leo didn't have a Pentar to his name. If he did, he would have tried to bribe Bastion Black the moment they met. Apparently it didn't matter. With these two, it's not a matter of money. Their forms of acceptable currency are a little more specific. But I think I might have something to persuade them. And what do you get out of it? Leo wanted to know. I'm just trying to settle up, Boss said. I told you I'd get you back to your family. Leo kept his eyes on the captain. It was a trick his father used against him all the time growing up. Just keep staring and the truth wriggles its way out to the surface. Okay, maybe that's not all of it, Baz admitted. Those fighters were waiting for something, maybe even for us. That complicates things a little. Contrary to what recent events might suggest, I don't enjoy being shot at. But if I'm going to be shot at, I'd at least like to know why. This way, maybe we can both get some answers. Except, even if Leo got the answer to his question, whether his father was still alive or where he was taken, it would only lead to an even bigger one. How could Leo possibly get him back? For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Matthew 6:21, King James Version.